Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the World Book Fair. So, today we have with us Rajesh Singh, a writer and analyst of politics and public affairs, and the co author with Arvind Gupta of the book The Silent Enemy Non Traditional Challenges to National Security, published by Blue One Ink. The book argues that national security today is shaped not only by conventional military threats but also by silent pressures such as food and water security, health systems, technology, supply chains, climate, and information warfare. Rajesh ji, a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
So, we have a few questions here for you, and let's begin with the book. The Silent Enemy, the title sounds very interesting, and coming from a reader, sounds quite fictional, to be honest. So, if you could tell us a little what this book is about.
Not only the title, in fact, a number of people before,
So, might pass.
a number of people much before these recent years actually thought that these factors that we have discussed in the book also were fictional as far as national security was concerned. Nobody connected these issues with national security. In fact, some of them were social indicators, some became environmental indicators, others became economic indicators, and so on. But this connection with national security started happening only recently as more and more countries in the world, including India, started realizing that these issues can affect national interest, national security as much as the other ones. Now, why do we call them non-traditional? And so when we talk of non-traditional, then we ought to know what traditional is. Now, traditional threats to security come from countries that are hostile to, let's say, if we take India, countries that are hostile to India, we have to always look out for threats from them. Without naming any, we have our western neighbor, we have a neighbor in the southeast, etc. Now we have a neighbor in the east even. And how do we face threats from them? The threats that we face from them are from their military strength, armed forces, having skirmishes on the border, etc. So those are the traditional threats, and we know how to deal with them. However, the non-traditional threats were something that have happened now, and we are learning slowly to deal with them just as the world is. Now, these non-traditional threats are a number. We have listed 15 in the book. From the Indian perspective, there could be more. And we have started from the premise that it's time to give attention to these non-traditional factors, 15 of them in the book, and treat them on par with the traditional threats.
Okay, sir. So, you said you have highlighted around 15 points here. So, if you could highlight a few, which for our audience, just to understand, just a few.
Yeah. So, one of the factors that we have mentioned is food security. Now, as per international convention, food security, when we talk of food security, what we really mean is that the availability of food and nutritious food for at least 3 to 6 months at a stretch without a break. When a society or when a country is able to do that for the last man in the line in its country, then it is said that there is a certain amount of food security in this country. Now, how is this security, internal security, or challenge? Let's begin globally. We all have heard of the French Revolution. Have you not? How did it start? It started because of repeated famines in the area of France. There was massive food shortages. People rebelled, and we all know what the Queen had said. It's a famous quote: "If people don't have bread, let them eat cake." So it started from there. Then later on, it of course evolved into many other issues, democracy, liberal values, etc., etc. But the beginning was food insecurity, right? Now come back to India. We all are aware of the Maoist movement, which thankfully it's on its very last legs now, and we are hoping that if the government keeps its promise, it should be eliminated by the next couple of months. How did the Maoist movement start? We all know that it began in a small village in Bengal called Naxalbari. But why did that begin? There are many reasons, but the one of the most important reasons is the apathy of the official machinery to the natural resources which the tribals and the poor demanded. One of them was also food. The massive food problems, people were not getting food. The food that was available through ration shops was of very poor quality. Then you had to pay bribes to get the food. So all of that created a lot of discontent, and because of that, the Maoist movement began. Of course, later on it degenerated into uh, virtually a terrorism kind of stuff, but it began with food insecurity. Finally, we all know about the insurgency in the northeast, right? Which again, thankfully, it's much under control today, though not altogether. In what is today Mizoram, we know of Mizo National Front, which spearheaded the insurgency movement. The Mizo National Front started off as an organization that was called Mizo National Famine Front. The reason was because of repeated famines in the region, people were not getting enough food, and the food that was available was not accessible because of the high prices. Therefore, this Mizo National Famine Front was created, and the leaders started a campaign uh, to make sure that food security was available. It was only later on that the word famine was removed and it became Mizo National Front, and it started fighting for liberation from India. So all of these have security dimensions. They all pose security threats to us. So that's one connection that food security has with national security. There are many others that we have mentioned in this, but let me just give you one more example, and it's an obvious example, and that is water security, right? Now, water security is, we have seen what we did with the Indus Waters Treaty. We suspended the Indus Waters Treaty with Pakistan following the Pahalgam terror attack. That is how we weaponized water. That's one example. But water is also an issue not just between India and Pakistan, but also an issue with China. With China, we don't even have an agreement. And yet, so Pakistan keeps on building these huge dams. Recently, it has started work on what is considered to be the world's largest dam. We have also started things on our side, but that dam that they are building on their side threatens to divert water from the because they're upstream. So divert water from the Brahmaputra, create problems of sedimentation here, also create shortages of water. All those issues are being tackled by us. We don't know how this will pan out. As I said, we don't have an agreement, so we don't know what is the mechanism by which these can be resolved. The short point is that water is also similarly a national security issue. There are so many of them. As I said, there are 15 of them that we have mentioned. There could be more, but water, food, health is also a big issue. We saw what happened during the COVID pandemic, how countries started suffering. They were, you had economies disrupted, your social life disrupted, and when all this was happening, in some parts, in fact, in the West, there was a study which said that radical elements like ISIS, etc., were very busy recruiting people during the COVID times, because one is that the social conditioning of people was very, very disturbing at that time. People were upset, people were angry, they were looking for outlets. So these guys were very busy doing that online, trying to recruit. So that's just one example. There could be many, and I'm sure anybody who reads the book will be able to find those out. These are non-traditional, as I said. Environmental, just one final example I'll give you. Many of our perennial rivers are fed by glaciers, right? And they are major rivers. Now we know what climate change is doing to the melting of glaciers. Just to give you an example, over the last 50 years, 9 trillion tons of glacial ice have melted away. And it is expected that by 2050, 1/3 of the world's major glaciers will just disappear. Now, just think of this. As I said before, most of our major rivers are perennial rivers and they are fed by glaciers. Now, if glaciers start disappearing at this pace, what will happen to these perennial rivers? They will turn seasonal. They will depend on rainwater. And when that happens, then just imagine if rains keep failing or fail in one season or the other season, what will happen to our agriculture, to our potable water needs, to our irrigation, everything. And that in turn could create unrest. We know how water creates unrest in the country. We have several inter-state water disputes which become violent and which create law and order and security issues. So similarly, water security also gets connected to national security.
Thank you, sir. That is very well explained. Next, so you talked about food security.
Yeah.
Of course, in a country with the kind of population we have and the economic condition that we do, food security is a great concern, and of course, it leads to further in-state problems. Like, of course, conversion is one, because that is a whole other problem. But how can India deal with an issue like this, with an ever-increasing population? But how to take care of its food security concerns?
Well, the first thing is that we are now food secure by and large. We are not only self-sufficient in food, we are also exporting. There are some areas where we still have to depend on imports, for example, palm oil. So there we do import. But by and large, we are now a food surplus, food exporting country. So to that extent, and also the availability of food to the common man, to the man who needs it most, that channel has been revised, improved, tweaked over the years and decades, and so we have basically arrived at a level where food security is not an issue. However, there are areas where food is, it's not that it's not available, but that sometimes it becomes difficult for the poor to access that food. Although now we have all kinds of facilities, you have guaranteed food security scheme. We saw that happening, working very well during COVID. In fact, in the rural areas of the country, so that part has been taken care of. But food is something that can, even in developed nations or developing nations, food is something that can anytime become an instant trigger. Mexico, we don't associate Mexico with poverty to the extent that we would, certain African countries. But in Mexico, I think it was in 2007, 2008, there was a massive food riot on the streets because one of their staple diets, because of export obligations with the US, that was getting exported and it was not available to the common man, and therefore the rates went up. It was called tortilla. So now that created huge riots and several people were killed. And in Haiti, of course, Haiti was a problem. So there was again in 2007, 2008 a very, very big food riot, and the United Nations peacekeeping forces had to come in to control this. So basically what I'm saying is that although we are food secure today, we are food exporting, we have to always be on our guard, because even though we are comfortable today, it can always, one small slip and we are back to the old situation.
Right. Thank you, sir. So, yes, in one of your chapters, you have also mentioned about the dangers from non-state actors. So, if you could explain what this word actually means, who non-state actors are, and what are the kind of threats we face from them.
Now, state actors are the countries and their armed forces or their intelligence agencies, paramilitary forces, whatever. So when India and Pakistan fought a war in 1965, it was India versus Pakistan. State actor versus state actor. Before the 1971 war, India versus Pakistan, state actor versus state actor. Kargil, India versus Pakistan, state actor versus state actor. Similarly, 1962, China, state actor versus state actor. No issues there. We know who our enemy is. We know how we have to deal with them. We may deal with them effectively, we may not deal with them that effectively, but we know that this is our enemy. Now, who is a non-state actor? A non-state actor is somebody who does not believe in the international structure, the international order, the international law, international systems. The non-state actor works in complete freedom and in disdain of all these limitations. The non-state actor can be an insurgent, can be a secessionist, can be a terrorist, an individual or an organization. Now, when we talk of non-state actors in our book as a non-traditional challenge to national security, why do we say that it is a non-state? Because these non-state actors, just by being non-state actors, would have been terrorists, and we would have to deal with them as a terrorist, as a country would deal with a terrorist organization. But these non-state actors are also sometimes, many times openly backed by state actors. So you have the Hamas backed by, let's say, Iran, you have Hezbollah backed by Iran, you have Lashkar-e-Taiba backed by Pakistan, you have Jaish-e-Mahmood backed by Pakistan, you have Hizbul Mujahideen backed by Pakistan. So when a non-state actor links up with a state actor, that is where the real threat for a country's national security becomes even more escalated. Because now we cannot just deal with a non-state actor as if it is just a private enterprise. Now we have to keep the state actor, which is either directly or covertly backing it. So everything that we do to a non-state actor, we have to now keep in mind that our response will rattle the state actor, and we don't know what the state actor will do in that case. So therefore, the threat to national security from these non-state actors tied to state actors becomes a problem. And we saw that after Pahalgam, we did Operation Sindoor. Now, Operation Sindoor was not directed at Pakistan. It was directed at certain pockets of terror outfits who were behind this massacre. They were non-state actors. Then the state actor got into action, and therefore our response after that became something else. So that is the threat. The threat of non-state actors is because they are backed, they are funded, they are supported by state elements.
Right, sir. Okay, I think I just have one more question before we open it to the audience. So, deep fakes and AI-driven misinformation has been evolving very quickly, especially in world of reels and social media. Especially, this is something which has reached to different layers of the society, including the younger ones, and perhaps it impacts them even more because research doesn't follow that visual. So, at a point like this, do you think India is, or we and our institutions are structurally prepared for this narrative warfare?
Yes, so we have a chapter on that as well. That's in fact there are two chapters. One is the evolving technology. That's one chapter which we have dealt with, and the second is the war of narratives. There are two different silent enemies, but in some ways they are connected. Now, the question that you ask is whether we are prepared, adequately prepared. We are not adequately prepared. There is a lot that we need to do in terms of, see, first of all, in technology, the internet, the social media. What do we own? We are only consumers. We don't own the technology, we don't own the servers, we don't own the website, we don't own the nothing. We only consume, we keep consuming. All our data is controlled by somebody else. We don't have a domestic or an Indian player in the market yet at that stage. So that's one thing. So every now and then, if something goes wrong, you go running to the foreign organizer. Like recently, India brought this issue of Grok, you know, with X. So similarly, so we have no control. Only when something goes wrong, we rush and we ask them to make amends, but by the time the damage has been done. Now, in terms of technology, because technology is and social media has evolved to such an extent, even the smallest mistake that we make gets amplified. And if we do not have control over social media or technology, even our achievements get downplayed by a rival. Now, let me give you an example of the narrative. Now, why narrative is important? Narrative is important because that is how you and I finally form our opinions. We don't make the opinions, we listen, and we listen to all the perceptions, sound, noise from all around, and we evolve, we form a perception, we form an opinion. So the narrative makes us form an opinion, and then we spread that opinion further and further according to what we think is right. And what we think is right, it depends upon what we hear. Let me give an example. Operation Sindoor happened. The Pakistani media showed an Indian plane crashing down in flames, right? And it said that a Rafale jet was shot down. Now, that was a MiG-21 plane that had crashed in an accident several months before. That was fact-checked a few days later. But the point is that for a little while, everybody believed in the narrative that Pakistan put out. Pakistan also put out the narrative that we are bombing our own holy sites like the Golden Temple in Amritsar or the civilians in Jammu. It took time for all of us to correct that perception. But as I said, the damage had already been done. So the narrative, and also the narrative is whether you're right or wrong in conducting an offensive depends upon how a country projects its narrative. World War II, even till today, I mean, World War II was, years ago, decades ago, but even till today, we tend to believe, to an extent correctly also, that the Allied powers were morally right and the Axis with Germany, Japan, etc. was wrong. Fair enough, that was true. But during that time, we didn't know, nobody knew, the Axis said that we are right, the Allied said we are right. But the US, the Britain and the Western powers which were part of the Allied had a better media management, right? So they were able to set the narrative that things were what they were in our favor, right? So that is how narratives are important. If you set a wrong narrative, then that message goes through and we start believing in that narrative, and then that is how disinformation or misinformation gets spread. We are doing we have taken some steps, but as I said, there is a lot that we need to do in terms of battle of narratives and in terms of control of technology.
Thank you, sir. Definitely, this is a huge issue and an issue that is growing. So I hope people pick this book and get to know what kind of silent enemies actually lie around us. So now we open the platform for questions from the audience. Anybody, if there are any questions, you can raise your hand and I'll just pass on the mic.
Hello, sir. On the basis of state actor and non-state actor, I just want to have a little take of yours about the current protest happening in Iran, and when the next 24 and 48 hours is like very crucial. So what is your take on that?
So the development in Iran is not about state or non-state actors or hostility, etc. It's more an internal issue from what we have understood until now of discontent of a certain section of the population against its ruling dispensation. That's one. Second, unlike what many people may want to believe, it's not a Gen Z protest. There are all kinds of people, not just the youth. That's second. The third, we still do not know if it is a purely internal rebellion or it has been influenced or funded or whatever by somebody else. We don't know all that. So it's very difficult. But one thing is there, the current revolt or the current unrest is something that the Iranian government is not used to. So it does not know how to be. Now let's say this were to happen in a democratic country like India. what should be the response and what would normally be the response. The government would reach out to the protesters, find out who is leading the protest, talk to them, sort of bring down tempers, and find a way to resolve the issue. But the Iranian government is not used to this system. So therefore, what does it do? It thinks that it's just a few handful of guys, so you fire at them, a few people will get killed, things will calm down. That does not happen. According to media reports, more than 500 people have already been killed, which is a huge number for any protest. So this is not state or non-state, but yes, it gets connected to certain issues of governance, which I dare say can be non-traditional issues of national security.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sir, I wanted to know what kind of research or preparation you did to write this book.
You see, this book has been written by two people, as you know, Dr. Arvind Gupta and me. Now, Dr. Gupta is a former Deputy National Security Advisor, and he's also now currently the chairman of the Vivekanand International Foundation, which is a think tank. And before this, I had been a journalist for a number of years, mostly in Goa, but the last 10 years from 2008 to 2018 in Delhi. So, and before this, I wrote a book called Sikh Separatism, A History of Conflict. So that again was a national security issue. Now the kind of research, we first identified the non-traditional threats. Some were identified by Dr. Gupta, others were added by me, but because he was in the field. In fact, when the National Security Council Secretariat was set up back in 1999 or so, he was a member. In those days, today you have several Deputy National Security Advisors with different age. Those days there was only one and he was the one. So he has that was the time when some of these national security challenges were incorporated in the national security doctrine, not a doctrine in writing, but informally, because we don't have a national security doctrine, formal doctrine, we still don't have one. So that was that. We had to, for example, when we think of, let's say, the food security or water security or health security or geo-economic security, all of these, there is a lot of material. The only thing is that not much of it has been read in a holistic fashion. No, it's okay. Not been read in a holistic fashion. We just switch it off. And when we read about water security, we think of water. When we read of food security, so the first time when we started researching, first thing was that we needed to connect all of them holistically, because let's say climate change, right? If there is climate change, as I said before, food would be affected, food security would be affected, water security would be affected, health security would be affected. When food, water and security get affected, then that becomes the priority for any family. What suffers would be education, because that is no longer a priority. Now being alive is a priority. So of course economic security gets affected by that. So just one connects all the dots. So that was the first thing we did when we started researching, that we must take this holistically and we should present it as a holistic issue, not in silos. So that's how we did our research. We picked up the topics, we went to all of them, but more importantly, we started looking for connections and linkages so that we get a larger picture. And that is the problem with our security planners even today. Many of them do not look at the larger picture because of bureaucratic turf wars, etc. Food wala bolega, food is my issue, don't interfere. Why do you? Somebody will say, oh, why are you securitizing economics, or why are you securitizing water? It's not a security issue, because. But now I think there is a greater realization now because the Prime Minister is talking about climate change a lot. So when he is investing in climate change, then everything that gets connected to climate change becomes important.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sir, you said that 1971 war was a war between state actors, but 1971 war from the Indian point of view could have also been driven by the refugee crisis, which would have turned into a security issue. So could that be one of the factors why India got involved in Bangladesh and got into a conflict with the state of Pakistan?
No, the reason why we got into a war with Pakistan were many, including the influx of the refugees, and because these people, we kept telling them कि भाई, do something. We cannot handle these many refugees. They did not do so, and then the brutality is increased. So those are the reasons. Those are the reasons. But we fought basically with Pakistan. At the end of the day, our battle, our war was with a state actor. There were several reasons for that, for the conflict. Refugee problem was an issue. Others were, the brutality was an issue, and we were of course waiting. They were also waiting for a chance through this, to again dabble in Pakistan-related, Jammu Kashmir-related problem. But basically, the war was at the end of the day between India and Pakistan, two state actors, which was not the case in 1948. The guys they sent across, the Razakars or whoever, whatever you may call them, were non-state actors, were state actors shrouded as non-state. So therefore, our treatment was different then. This time it was between country to country.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, I think this is it. I just have a last question for you.
Yeah.
Please tell us, who did you write this book for, or who should pick up this book?
Well, I would be very happy if as many people, as many readers pick up the book. But I would certainly say that this is for the, this is essentially for the younger audience and not for those, for people who have seen it all. In any case, diplomats, intelligence organization, professionals, etc. They know about these things. What is more important is that the younger generation, the younger lot should learn, because many of these things are also in their control. Climate change, small things, we can do whatever we can at our end in terms of conserving water or keeping the air clean, fuel, etc., fuel technologies, switching to electric cars. There are so many things that we don't have to go into all of that. That it will take too long. But the younger generation needs to be more aware that it's not just the professionals who have a stake in national security. Every one of us has a stake. You have a stake, I have a stake, the common man on the road has a stake. We all have a stake in national security, because if the nation is not secure, then none of us is. So therefore, it is basically meant for the younger readers, and the professionals, etc., can of course read it from another viewpoint to see whether it has been academically well researched, etc., etc. But I would, much want the younger readers to give this the attention that we think it deserves as authors.
Thank you so much, Rajesh ji. These were very insightful words. So now we'll just have a book signing. We'll sign a few books and we'll keep it for our readers here. Anyone who comes here can pick up this book. And anyone who is interested in buying the book, you can come here, get it signed from Rajesh ji and take it along with you. And hopefully learn a lot from here and also imply it in our lives. Thank you so much, Rajesh ji, and thank you all.